Hello everyone, welcome back to this new session on effective research article writing, uh, which is a session or which is probably the last session in the workshop Recent Trends in Research Methodology. And this workshop has been organized by the RSRI group. So in the last session, we saw what are the basic components of a particular research article and how to approach the research article and how in which particular sequence you should uh, go for the writing the research article. Now, in this particular session, I'm going to show you a couple of tips and tricks by which you can maximize the efficiency while writing the research article. There are certain free tools that are available out there which you can use to effectively write the research article, and by using some of these methods that I'm going to describe, maybe you can speed up the process of writing, because generally we take a lot of time in the writing part. So maybe by using these processes or these particular tips and tricks that I'm going to share, you can maximize your writing efficiency, and you can do your work in less amount of time. Let us go to a particular research paper that I was kind of writing. So this is a new research paper that, suppose say I am writing. As you can see here on the left side of the panel, this is something called the outline of the research paper. So this outline of this research paper is being prepared by me based on the during the pre-writing phase. So I have so what are the general components? So let me hide all these inside components. So typically in a research paper from STEM background, science, engineering, technology, and management background, these are the some of the key sections that are there in the research paper. So you have something called the abstract, which is basically the advertisement of the entire paper. Then you have the introduction, you have the materials and methods, or this could be also the methodology part. Okay, so the methodology part could be named in different way. For example, in most of the engineering papers or most of the papers related to basic sciences or to experimentation sciences, we generally like to use the word materials and methods. Maybe in some other field, this may be referred to as the methodology section. The next part is the results and discussion section, and the last part is the conclusion section, followed by the references section. Now, some of you may also like to add one additional part. For example, just after the introduction, maybe you may like to add another part called the uh, literature review part, right? You may like to add the literature review. Okay, so in that case, your particular paper will have this particular 5 main sections, and you have a abstract and you have a reference as the precursor and the end portion of the particular manuscript. So now, in some cases, people, whenever they are not carrying out very extensive kind of literature review, and then they'd like to put the literature review, or they like to merge the literature review in the introduction itself. For example, if you know that the article that you are going to write or the manuscript that you are going to write is going to be quite long in terms of the materials and methods and the results and discussion. For example, if you know that you have a lot of results and discussion and you need a substantial amount of place and substantial amount of uh, uh, space in the manuscript to write the results and discussion section, then maybe a good strategy is to avoid the literature review as a separate section and include it in the introduction section. Otherwise, you may exceed the page limit, or you may exceed the word limit of the particular manuscript. Generally, the trend in the STEM backgrounds is that somewhere around 6,000 words is the average, 5,000 to 600 words is the average length of any research article. There are also certain research papers that may go on to as high as 10,000 or 11,000 words. Okay, so but 5,000 to 6,000 is kind of the average, and generally we should try to stick to this range so that we can be sure that any typical journal would be this particular manuscript would be eligible for any typical journal. If suppose it exceeds the 6,000 or the 7,000 limit, then number of journals are there, quite a significant number of journals are there, good journals are there who will not accept this paper because it has crossed the page length. Okay, that is why if you know that you have sufficient amount of results, and then you will need a sufficient amount of place to describe this. For example, you know that you will need somewhere around 3,500 words to 4,000 words. For example, in my case, I know now now itself that based on the study that I have carried out and based on the points that I have that I want to put across in this particular paper, I know that I will be easily covering somewhere around 3500 to 4000 words in the results and discussion. So that is why I want to segregate in such a way that I have somewhere around 3000 to 3500 to 4000 words in the results and discussion. I have somewhere around 500 to 300 to 500 words in the conclusion, and in the abstract I have close to 200 words, and then the remaining portion whatever I have for an average uh, length of suppose 6000 to 7000. Suppose even if I'm considering that my paper is going to be 7000, and if I consider that 4000 is here, so 3000 remaining. If I consider that another another 1000 words I need to describe the materials and methods, so 2000 remaining. Out of the 2000 remaining words, suppose say 500 goes towards the conclusion, so another 1500 remaining, and out of the 1500 another 200 words goes towards the abstract, so another 1300 remaining. And so in the 1300 words I have to finish the introduction and the references also, because references also be counted in the total number of words that you have to understand. So it will be generally in a good introduction, we typically need, for example, in any kind of typical introduction, we need at least somewhere around 1000 to 1200 words, including the literature review part. So I'm going to spend somewhere around 1000 to 1200 words here. And it means even I'm not going to manage this particular article within the 7000 words, and maybe I will need some additional 500 to 600 words, somewhere around 7500 words I will need to include the references section also. So that is why you have to plan accordingly that how you what could be the possible length of the paper, and what are the possible insights that you can draw in the paper, what are the possible discussions that you have in the paper, that you have to decide beforehand. So in my case, this is the basic outline. This is the basic outline of, in fact, this is the basic outline of any research paper. So you may start with this, okay? Once you have this, then you can go and add on the fine prints. For example, let me show you here in the materials and methods, which is essentially the methodology part. Here I have done something called the experimental procedure. Here first I'm describing what is the experimental procedure. Then I'm describing the numerical procedure that I'm using. And then I'm describing the secondary numerical procedure that I'm using. Okay, so all these kind of methods should be explained here. Since it's an experimental study, we should generally start with how we have conducted the experiments and what are the experiments. Then we go on to how we model that experiments into the numerical modeling, and then we go on to the secondary study that we are doing in this particular work. Okay, so like this we have to classify and we have to segregate the article. Next, during the results and discussion phase, so it's a good idea if you know beforehand, or if you have a clear idea, or if you have a clear vision in your mind. Sometimes it may not be that clear of a vision, sometimes it may be a rough outline, but it's good to start with that rough kind of outline. For example, I know that at least I know at this point of time that I'm going to start with this particular 4 subsections within the results and discussion. So it's a good strategy to write the subsections first, write the name of the subsections first. So as you can see, I have written down the names of the subsection that I'm going to use. So like this, I have drawn the subsections. So if I consider that even if in all these subsections, I am going to use somewhere around 700 to 800 words per subsection, it means I am going to write around 2800 to 3500 words. Okay, so based on that, you have to take some decision. Now, generally, I suggest that if it is related to experimentation, or even if it is related to data analysis from the survey-based data, or even if it is related to the numerical experimentation, then what we should do is that first we should collect all the results that we have. We should analyze all the results that we have, and maybe we can then decide on how you want to, at least primarily, how you want to present the data and how you want to showcase the data or showcase the research that you have. So that is why it's a general. So let me close this. So generally, what happens is that we should first decide which are the tables and the figures that we are going to show, and how you are going to project the data and how you are going to project the research. So here you see that I have included the tables here. So I have one table, so I have included the table here. Okay. Similarly, I have drawn all the necessary graphs that I need to describe my work effectively. I have drawn all those kind of graphs, as well as I have given the caption to all of them. Okay, so this is the first thing that you should do as you create the graphs and as you insert them in your article. This could be the starting point for your article. You put all the graphs and all the figures that you have, graphs and the figures as well as the tables here, and you label them, that what is this particular graph, what is this particular table describing. So initially this could be a rough kind of description initially. So, and the sequence can also be a rough sequence right now. So what you can do later is that, depending on how you are going to use them in what sequence you are going to use them in the research paper, maybe the sequence can change later. But initially you need to have all the data that you have for the paper in the paper itself. Okay, so here if you can see, I have listed out all the figures that I have. Okay, I have listed out all the figures that I have here, and these are the basic kind of figures that I will need. So as I go on writing, if I feel the need for some additional figures, maybe then I will go and draw them, because I have the raw data available with me. But at this present point, or during the pre-writing phase, I have decided that at least these are the data that I want to show. Okay, at this point of time, these are the data at least which I want to show. I may try to show more depending on the necessity when I'm writing the discussion, and depending on the need to show the reader to make him understand the overall study. Okay, so once you have this, okay, now what you should do is that, as I told you, you can start with the materials and methods section. So in the materials and methods section, or the methodology section, is properly defined. For example, our experimentation procedure is properly defined, so we have started with the experimentation procedure. So in the experimentation procedure, we have detailed out whatever we have done, and wherever the references are needed, maybe we have put them in the rough form right now, and as we go on, we will correlate them, and all will be included in the manuscript. So this is a list of references that you see here. That is again based on uh, some insertions that I have done here. I will show you. I hope so. It is here. Okay, it is not here. So references should not be here right now. So in fact, you should delete this now, since this was kind of a half complete paper. So we had already done it. So I had included the reference, but let me delete it. So your references should not be here right now. Okay, right now it should be something like this. So now you have the results and you have the materials and methods written. Okay, maybe you can finish the remaining part of the materials and methods, and then you can start with the results and discussion, because you have already graphs and the figures with you. So you can start with the results and discussion, then you can go for the conclusion, and then based on the conclusion, we need to draw the introduction. We need to write the introduction, and based on the introduction, we need to formulate the abstract, and finally we are going to formulate the uh, title. Right now the title that I have kind of here, it is only because since I'm collaborating this project with a number of my co-authors, and since we are working on multiple projects at a time, that is why I have put this as a primary kind of, or this is a rough kind of title, so that they can segregate, or they can easily understand that which paper we are working on. So this is not the final name of the this is not the final title of the manuscript. So this is just an rough name that we have put here, so that all the collaborating authors know that which version or which particular paper we are working on. Since in my case, I'm working with the same collaborators on multiple kind of projects. So to be aware that who is right, who in which paper you are working, that is why we have put the rough title. Okay, if suppose say you are writing it alone in your own computer, maybe you need not have this as well. Okay, sometimes having a rough title helps in the way that it helps you to keep your flow of information focused here. Because if you have a rough title here, suppose say at least the keywords that are going to be in the rough title in the title are here in form of a rough title, then by looking at this rough title, you also have a understanding of how you want to approach the results and discussion phase. So this is the basic kind of methodology that I like to follow when I am doing research, and when I'm writing a paper. Now suppose say depending on depending on what I have found, depending on the experiments, suppose say whatever I have found, okay, now based on that I have to carry out some literature search. The literature search can be done even before the part of the, actually the literature search is a kind of ongoing process. What happens is that when we decide that this is the particular area or the problem that we are going to track, at the time we do a literature survey, and we, based on the literature survey, we try to identify a gap. Again, during the writing phase, as we go on writing, for example, I am using a particular material here, or I am using a particular technique here, so for that I need certain references, okay. For that you can again go and search for the most current kind of references, and you can include them here. So generally what I prefer, or what I suggest to all is that, suppose say you are using some method, for example you are using some generic method, means some method that is there for a quite long time. So the basic objective or the basic technique should be that what you should do is that you should include the primary source of information where this method was derived or where this method was described. Means the first paper or the legacy paper generally should be referred where this method or this particular technique was derived. Then subsequently at least one or two additional papers citing that particular some recent papers, at least one or two papers from the last 1 or 2 years on that paper should be cited, so that it can be established during the review phase, or it can be made clear to the reviewer, or it can be projected to the reviewer that this particular kind of method, though it may be a legacy method, or though it may be a method that was maybe developed 5 years ago, or suppose 10 years ago, or even 30 years ago, but still that is something that is relevant, and other people are doing the work on it, and researchers are constantly working on it. So I generally suggest that whenever you describe the metals and methods and the methodology part, you need to have two kinds of references. The first kind of reference could be the primary reference, which is basically a testimony to the, or which is basically acknowledgement of the original method that was developed by the original researcher, and at least we should have at least one or two additional recent references to convince the reviewer that this is something that this method is still relevant. Okay, so these are some of the tricks on or these are some of the processes that I follow in my papers. Next, what we can do is during the, as I told you, that the literature review is going to be a very ongoing kind of thing. You do it even before starting the project, you do it during writing phase, and you do it after you have written the results and discussion. For example, suppose say after you have written your results and discussion, you found out certain things. For example, you have made some conclusions. Now, based on that conclusions, you can go and search in the web that are these conclusions also found by different individuals. If you already do not know whether these conclusions are founded by some other people or not, sometimes you cannot be too sure, because maybe when you started the project, suppose say 2 months back or 3 months back, maybe at that point of time when you analyze all the research papers, or when you analyze all the literature, it might have not been published. So it's a good practice generally to do a literature review once more, or do a brief kind of literature review once more after you have completed 90% of the paper, or at least after you have completed your results and discussion. So generally what I do is that after I have written my results and discussion, and after I have written my conclusion, so based on the conclusion that I have drawn, and based on the discussions that I have drawn, I go back to the Google Scholar or to the search engine where I am going to search for additional literatures on this particular topic. So if I find something that is being that directly connects with the claims that I am making, or directly something that even contradicts with the claims that I am making, I try to read that manuscript, or I try to read that article, and I try to draw a correlation between the existing literature and the conclusions that I have drawn. Maybe in that sense, you need to revise the results and discussion a bit, and you need to revise the conclusions a bit. Okay. Also, based on the conclusions and the results and discussions, now when you do a literature survey, you can now add some specific papers which can directly correlate to the conclusions that you have drawn. Okay, so in that way, or some specific papers where they have also mentioned about this specific problem, but they have kept it as unsolved. So now if you do that, what happens is that when the reviewer reads through your paper, he finds that, okay, these are certain problems that other researchers have also identified, but no one has found the answer to this, or no one has at least worked comprehensively on this. And when he goes through your paper and finally reads your conclusion and finally reads your discussion, he immediately remembers that, okay, this was something that the XYZ researcher has also done, and he couldn't produce a comprehensive solution to it, or he couldn't give a comprehensive answer to it. Here the current researcher has tackled that problem. So it's a good kind of research that also subconsciously gets lost in the mind of the reviewer. Okay, so this kind of subtle tricks are important, or this kind of writing schemes are important to enhance the quality of your paper. Again, the writing of your paper is going to be a very uh, iterative process. For example, one of my co-guide during my PhD, he used to tell me that what he generally, the process generally he follows is that once I submit him a paper, for example, I was kind of displeased with the fact that he always used to take at least one month for the full written papers that I submit him to review. I generally used to send my papers during my PhD to him, and he would generally return the review of the paper in, suppose say, generally in with, after 1 month. Okay, so most of these papers that I send him were kind of the finalized draft from my side. So I have nothing more to add in, and this final paper when I send him, and once I asked him out of query or out of curiosity that why do you take so much long time, since I have already done all the work, and since I have already detailed out all the process and the flows there, why do you generally take so long to do the review? So he replied to me that what he does is that he reads through my paper and he makes the most obvious kind of changes, or he makes the most obvious kind of comments there in the paper itself, and then he keeps the paper. He takes a printout of the paper. Generally what he does is that he takes a printout of this paper and he keeps it on his desk, and he doesn't touch it until a layer of dust sits on the paper. In a sense, what he was trying to tell me is that he doesn't look at the paper for another 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, he doesn't look at the paper, he doesn't read the paper. So as soon as I send him the paper, he reads it, he kind of edits it, whatever the obvious kind of comments he has. So he does them, and he puts the obvious kind of comments on them, and then he keeps a print copy with him. He gets a print of that whole thing, and he keeps the print copy with him on his desk, and then he doesn't touch it for another 2-3 weeks. Okay, after 3 weeks, he reads the same thing again, and then what he finds is that now he has some additional thoughts, or he has some additional, he says to me that he always finds some additional changes or some additional suggestions after, when he looks at it after 2 to 3 weeks. So that is something happens, that is something that I am also trying to follow. And though I do not, because I work on multiple projects at a time, and my sometimes my collaborators kind of push me that I have to that we have to finish the project on time. So generally I do not get to do that, but whenever possible I also try to do that. And I generally see that there is a refinement in the thought process if you do not work on, if you suppose say, what I'm trying to say is that when you complete a manuscript and keep it ideal for 2-3 weeks, and you do not read about that manuscript, or when you are not actively working on that project for another 2-3 weeks, and when you come back to the project after 2-3 weeks, then you find that some kind of enhancements are possible, or some kind of new thoughts comes to your mind in terms of how you can again maybe restructure the manuscript, or maybe what additional points or what additional discussions you could have made. This kind of small changes, or this kind of small uh, uh, obvious kind of modifications in the papers become visible if you keep the paper idle for 2-3 weeks and go back to it after 2-3 weeks. Okay, so that is again something, a suggestion that maybe you can follow depending on the time frame of your project. Again, let me finish this particular session by showing you quickly how you can do an effective literature search. For example, in this case, suppose say my objective is that I want to deposit this particular, I want to make some thin films or some coatings, and then I want to optimize them by using the a particular algorithm. So now, what you can do is that maybe when you are doing a literature survey, maybe you can write the keywords here. For example, in my case, the keywords are DLC, and my keywords are NSGA 3. I'm going to go and search them. Okay, so now what you find here is that once you do that, you may find some papers related to this. Okay, generally what will happen is that when you separate these searches by comma, so it is basically something like writing like this. Okay, if you write like this, it is the same kind of search that this does. So generally it is searching for this and this. Okay, and when you put something within the quotations, if I put, suppose say NSGA 3 within the quotations, now it is doing a hard search for this. Means it is looking at papers where exactly this word is referred to in this particular terminology. Okay, so this is kind of a hard search when you put it within the quotations. And if you do it like this is kind of a soft search where almost similar papers or whatever similar is there will be referred to you. Okay, suppose say I find for example in this particular case, if you see here, though I have searched for DLC and NSGA, if you were from my field, you could immediately understand that though this paper is on the topic NSGA, but it is not on the topic of DLC. Okay, similarly if I look at here also, if you look at this particular paper, you can see that this particular paper is again related to this topic but not covering this topic. Okay, so this kind of suggestions, you can improve the suggestions by including the quotation marks, which basically means that you are going for a hard search. You are searching for that exactly same thing. Or maybe since we are using an acronym, we can also convert them into something more generic. Okay, something more generic, because DLC is supposed to say the exact thing that I'm working on, but it comes under the broad family of the coatings. So I'm going to write coatings, and I'm going to again now you see that some bit of improvement is there. Now I see that this particular paper is somewhat related to me, and it also contains somewhat similar tools that I am using, but it is not exactly matching to me. So now depending on this kind of search, what you need to do is that first you need to start with something very pinpointed. Okay, whenever you are doing a eraser search, first you want to do something very pinpointed. For example, in the first case that I showed you, DLC was the exact material that I was working in. I searched for the DLC, and NSGA 3 was the exact technology I was using. So I searched for both of these combined. Now, since I find that in my search DLC, no papers on the exact topic was there, so I broadened the topic of the material domain here. Okay, this is an interdisciplinary paper where I have some material part and I have some soft computing part from the computer science. So this part I have broadened it now. Okay, so now my search has got a little broadened, and now you can see now additional, you can see these results also. It will generally, as you broaden the topic, the number of these search objects will also go on increasing. Last time if you look at last time, here it was only 67. Okay, now it has increased to 844. Means the scope of my search has now become a little broader. Okay, so next, if you are still not convinced, or if you are still not able to find suitable papers from this also, maybe what you can do is, maybe you can broaden the second keyword also that you have. So the second keyword that I have comes from a background of this particular background or this particular domain. I am now going to broaden it. So as soon as I broaden both of this, you find now that the results have become significantly higher. I have somewhere around 19 lakh or 1.9 million research results here. And now based on this, now it is segregating, or it is showing all these papers to me based on the Google Scholars algorithm, which lists the relevant articles most on the top and the other articles towards the bottom. Okay, suppose say this is a particular paper, though it's not, just I'm assuming. Suppose say this is a particular paper that is related to my paper. Okay, and now you can do something called the forward search and something called the backward search. So what is basically a forward search and backward search? For example, now when you started with this particular search and you got this particular paper, which is supposed to say related to my paper, then what you can do is that you can do a forward search. What is a forward search? For example, here you see that this particular paper was published in 2007. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to look at the papers that cited this research. So you see that 415 papers have cited this. So I'm going to click here. So as soon as I click here, I am now looking at only those 415 papers which was citing that this original paper. Okay. Now what I can do is that I can now look at this particular papers one by one, and this type of search is known as the forward search. You start with one paper and then you look at which paper, which other papers have cited that paper, and you go and search among them that which particular papers can be relevant to your task. Again, you can open a new forward search from that. For example, again, suppose say if I believe that this particular paper is somewhat relevant to me, now I'm going to open another forward search for this paper. Okay, so if you kind of this is kind of how you are branching out your search. Okay, how you are kind of branching out your search. Now next, within this 549 papers that I have cited these papers, I am going to see for the relevant papers that I have. Okay, so this is one strategy of searching. Another strategy of searching could be, suppose say, let me go back to my search page. Another strategy could be, when I'm searching for this, I am basically looking for the last, suppose say 2-3 years. Okay, so or for the last 2 years. So I'm going to click here since 2019. So now the Google search will show me only the papers which are from the last 2 years. Okay, so in this way I can search for the most I can search for the current literature that I need. Okay, even I can do a custom kind of settings here. I can search for the custom particular years. Suppose say I want to look at from, suppose say from 2016 to till now. So I'm going to leave this blank. It means till now. So now I'm looking from 2016 till now. Okay, so like this also you can improve your search. Now this is what we call the technique that I showed you right now. This is called the forward search. Now there is again something called the backward search. So what basically backward search is, suppose say this paper, why this Google Scholar is good or useful is that wherever freely available articles are there, wherever a freely version of this article is there, it will try to link it. Okay, so for example here you see that it has linked a manuscript to this particular article, and this particular article is available freely online. So I'm going to go and look at the particular paper. Now I will show you something called the backward search. Okay, so in the backward search, what we do is that probably what we do is that we look at the reference of the particular paper that we have found interesting or we have found relevant, and then we look at the citations of that paper. Okay, backward search is a little difficult because now when you are looking at this particular papers, you have to identify just by the title. Based on the title of the papers, you have to identify whether this particular paper is relevant to me or not. And maybe if suppose say you are confused about whether this particular paper is relevant to me or not, maybe what you can do is that you can copy the title of the manuscript. For example, let me copy the title of this manuscript and I'm going to put it here. So if you put the exact title here, so you are going to find, okay, I should do it anytime. So I'm going to find the exact paper, and then generally what happens is that the Google Scholar or the web page itself will show you the abstract. So now you can read the abstract, and based on the abstract, at least you can read the abstract now. And based on the abstract, now you can decide whether you want this paper or you do not want this paper. So this is something that we call backward search. In forward search, we go with the citations that are citing that particular article, and in backward search, we look at the references of that particular article, and then we search backwards. Okay, that is why, in a sense, they are called as the forward search and the backward search. Okay, so these are some of the techniques by which you can maximize the effectivity of your search. Additionally, I recommend that there is something called Grammarly. There is a software called Grammarly. Again, you can take a free version of this. Again, this particular software is both, you can purchase this or you can have a free version of this. So the free version has some only limited access, but this limited access are good enough. So what you can do is that you can go to www.grammarly.com and you can download and you can make a online account in the website. So once you make an online account, you will find a link for downloading the plugin for Word or MS Word. If you use MS Word, you will find the plugin for MS Word. You can download it, and then you can log in there with your Google ID, and then you can use the basic version. So in the basic version, you get spell check and all this kind of things, spell check, grammar check, and punctuation check. This kind of things are there in the basic version, which is basically the free version. Suppose say if you have the funds available to you, maybe you can buy this and other module also, where you get information regarding the plagiarism, writing style and all that. But generally I have seen that the free version is good enough for us, because it tells you the punctuation, the common kind of punctuation mistake, or the common kinds of missing words, or common kind of verb mistakes and all that. It tells you. So maybe you can use this software called the Grammarly, along with the you can plug it with your MS Word, and then maybe you can use it. So this brings us to the end of this particular session, as well as to the end of this workshop. So I hope that all of you during the last 5 days had a good time in learning, in regards to learning, and in regards to attaining some new information regarding the research methodology in this workshop. And I hope that the information and the additional knowledge that you have taken from this particular workshop, you will use them effectively in writing good articles. You will publish in very good research paper. That is what I hope and what I wish. Thank you for your time.